Thank you to all of you who have taken your time to come on Sunday. About myself, I'm an integrative chiropractor and a chiropractic neurologist. I work mostly with anybody who has a brain. I've been practicing for the last 24 years, and we employ a lot of different strategies for assessing individuals' health. We utilize Biocom machines, Vega, Rife machines, all different type of the bioenergetic equipment that's been around for the last 20 years. And my practice is in Gold Coast, but because of my travels, I also consult in other cities, and I consult in Adelaide as well. As an integrative practitioner, which makes us a lot more receptive to this kind of technology, is we are not closed-minded, and we don't look at one aspects of health, or we're looking at one magic bullet. Everything that exists plays a role in our well-being. It's just understanding how to utilize it that can be suitable for individuals or individuality or biochemical individuality or energetic individuality. One of my interests in Profiler was the fact that I could get some information within 15 minutes. And it was very quick. I'm also, as a functional neurologist, we do a lot of muscle testing, kinesiology, and we do a lot of different format. And again, anything that we can get our hands on to give us information is how we can best understand. And as a transformational coach, and we do a lot of spiritual training, I run a lot of spiritual workshops, helping people to develop strategies to be able to understand how to best adapt to the environment, adapt to the world around them. Which takes us to what I wanted to say in relationship as a practitioner. When we're dealing with disease, we understand that everything in our environment is having an impact on us. But what the difference between what makes someone healthy and what causes one disease to evolve in one's body and mind is actually inability of that person to adapt to the changes of environment. So you can adapt to if our environment operating of a frequency of a disease frequency, our body we don't recognize disease within this field. We recognize disease as a condition of adaptation. So, for example, our brain is a very adaptive piece of equipment. It's a very, very placid piece of plastic. Plasticity of the brain is very phenomenal. And it operates from 0 to 40 hertz, depending on the kind of thoughts we have. And if you put the body close to an environment where it's resonating above that frequency, the brain first attempt is to adapt itself to that frequency. So therefore, now the conceptions and the perceptions and the way the brain is wired is different than what it was before. And based on what it picks up in its environment triggers our DNA and our genes to changes its molecular structure to create a body that matches the environment. So you could have a choice of having a body that mirrors an environment that has spiritual genes, or mirror an environment that has activate or hostile genes. The choice is ours, but what the difference is knowledge. Within our deep part, all over our brain, there is a certain nerve cells called mirror neurons. And the role of mirror neurons, they call it mirror neurons because it mimics the environment. It picks up the signals from the environment. Signals are the genetic molecules or genes and DNA and the epigenetic field. And then gradually over the years and generation after generation, we create a physical vehicle that matches the environment. And it does that as a means of adaptation. So integrative approach to health is how we could help individuals to adapt to the environment or adapt. Now, what kind of adaptation would you like to have? Would you like your body to be adapted to an environment where you feel continuously activating your hostile genes, where we live in a society where everybody is angry, stressed? Or would you like to adapt your body to an environment where you could create a sense of well-being, serenity, and activate your mirror neurons, which activate your spiritual genes to have a very profound vehicle which serves your consciousnness. The choice is ours. And this is where I got interested in the field, and I looked at this profiler as one of the aspects of this phenomena. Now, one of the things that we need to understand, the basic of all of these adaptation comes back to our genetic makeup. If you look at our genes, the way it is like you have a book. And the book has 23 chapters. We call it 23 pairs of chromosomes. And then we have each chapter is written of sentences. And each sentence has the words. And so the whole idea is that how we read those words, how those sentences are got together, that determines how we activate our genes. When I work with children, for example, when somebody reads a word and they have a dyslexia or they have difficulty reading, they may misinterpret the word. So if we have an ability, our perception is not there, and when we look at our environment and what we perceive is different, and based on our epigenetic factors, we actually will activate our epigenetic fields to influence our DNA to produce a physical vehicle that matches our perception, not what's actually there. Like, for example, I have a client, because I work with a lot of people with neurological challenges. They looked at the picture of a swimmer, and they looked at me, and they're like, wow, why are you looking at a naked woman? It was just a swimmer swimming, but for them, the brain perceives it to be a naked woman. It was just a man standing next to the swimming pool with the hands up. But that's how the brain perceives it. Take it further, I always have my disclaimer in my beginning of our lectures. And my disclaimer is that our brain process 400 billion bits of information per second. That's a lot of information. We are only conscious of 2,000. So it takes 20 million of me at any given second to make sense of reality at any given second for me. So I'm only sharing with you my 2,000 bits. So if my 2,000 bit does not match your 2,000 bit, it's okay, because yours is mostly correct. We are part of the energetic field that we just share what our perception is. And doesn't make anyone else right or wrong. We just haven't yet come to the conclusion to be able to have the same experience and the same perception. So therefore, it goes back again to the epigenetic field. What the science discovered within these 23 chapters of the book, that we only have 25,000 DNA who actually makes our body. We have 25,000, they call it protein coding genes. And the protein coding genes is as when you look at the picture before, is our DNA, who actually give rise to the proteins that makes our body to be what it is. And this is when we do have a blood test, when we do an actual physical test, which is a static, it actually shows what's going on with our blood pathology. And we have certain diseases because it's a protein coding and it makes our body to be what it is. What they discovered is there's only 25,000 DNA. But they also found there's close to more than 4.2 million DNA, which is just floating around. They didn't know what to call them, so they call them junk DNA. So the best way I could present you a picture of the crop field, and you see the middle one is a DNA. The rest of it around that is just so much DNA, and they call it junk DNA. It wasn't until about 10 years ago they discovered that this junk DNA is actually not a junk. Because what stimulate the DNA to produce the protein is the signals they receive from its environment. So hence they give rise to what we call epigenetic field. So they call it epigenetics. And epigenetic is as you can see that it is a sequence or components of an organism DNA that do not encode protein, and it makes up over 90% of our genome. Epigenetic is a study of inherited changes in gene expression caused by mechanisms other than changes in underlying DNA. It seeks to explain how environmental exposure can contribute to many health problems ranging from cancer to cardiovascular disease and neurological disorder. Even the American Supreme Court ruling in 2013 says we no longer need to use the word junk genes, we need to use the word epigenetics, because epigenetic is what actually is what the government use to identify the person. It's not the DNA, it's the epigenetics. So hence it comes to the field of epigenetic area. So it's no longer a junk field. Again, we understand, like if you smoke, smoking may not have an impact on you, but if you're pregnant, it will have an impact on permanently on the information field on our DNA, on the epigenetic DNA, non-coding DNA, which generation after generation could gradually give rise to lung cancer. So that's something that we could understand. So again, when we're talking about epigenetic, majority of epigenetic factors are inherited. So when we're measuring epigenetic field, one of the very powerful tool is when I work with my clients, I always ask them, tell me about the well-being of your family. I need to know the health and the health history of your families, mom, dad, grandparents. And because the healing genes is carried through the X chromosomes, so people who have, individuals who have a healthy mother side family have a more chance of survival than people with mother side who has a lot of sicknesses. So therefore, we use those informations to understand. But again, just because someone is exposed to a chemical today, if people who come into me and they smoke, they drink, they've done all the wrong food and they're still looking healthy, I always first thing I ask them is, did your parents live a long life? They said, yeah, they did. I said, fantastic. You inherited strong constitution, or what in homeopathy we call miasmatic trait, the patterns of health. And so therefore, but however, that type of lifestyle, it's affecting that person's epigenetic field. And if they have children, it would have an impact on their children's. And that now that children is born, not with the same epigenetic field that person's parents had, but a new epigenetic field, which is contribute to development of cancer, disease, cardiovascular disease, all the other diseases we know, 2-3 generations down the track. This is where the beauty of profiler is. When I was experimenting and working with my client since April, is I discovered it doesn't only gives you information about the person, but it actually gives you information based on the epigenetic factors, which is mostly inherited patterns. And that's why it's so important as a practitioner. My 2,000 bets, remember, don't make it a rule. My 2,000 bets of information that I've been able to consciously process in my clinic, and I trial it with people here and overseas. When I was traveling, everybody here, give me your hair, let me test it. Is what I discover is actually, it's very important not to compare it to a blood test. It's very important not to compare it to what you already know about yourself, but it's important just to lay back and listen. And listen to what is actually trying to tell you. Don't get hyped up and says, oh, I can tell you what's going on. You got tryptophan deficiency. And it could create confusion. Because when you're thinking about epigenetic field, we need to really be cautious of how to approach it. So for the well-being of what if you're going to take this on board and do something with it, the key is to be patient and understand and slowly work with it. Don't jump into conclusion right away, because your conclusion is only 2,000 bets. And you don't want to miss out opportunity to be open to other rest of your 1,999,999 and 80. So even now we understand that epigenetic field or junk DNA have a big role in development of heart conditions. Now, they've done when they did a study on the actual DNA, which is everybody looked at DNA as a two-dimensional, And they looked at it and said, great, but when you actually get a cross-sections of the DNA with its epigenetic field, you see what a beautiful picture you get. This is actually the topographic model of our DNA with its epigenetic field. It's actually beautiful, rather than very boring two strand of DNA, two-dimensional that we will look at mostly. Now, another way you understand genes, as Ian was talking about, when you're born with a certain set of DNA, you die with a certain set of DNA, is look at your DNA as an assembly line. When you're making in a factory, an assembly line who make the car, all the employees have a specific position. And everybody and all the machine they do a specific task. One puts the wheels on, one puts the car handles on, one puts the screws on. Everybody do everything properly, and everybody have a lifetime contract. They're not supposed to change because they're designed to do something specific, and that's what they do. And that's what we call DNA. The sequence of our DNA is a set, nothing changes. But however, when the machine comes out, either you have a perfect machine, or you could have a machine which is missing a wheel. When you're missing the wheel, what will you do? You can go and find out, do you say, oh, wow, I have a mutation in my gene? You go and says, wow, that employee that puts the wheel is still there. So there's no mutation. What's causing the problem? Epigenetic field says maybe that employee ate the wrong food the night before. Maybe he's got diarrhea. He had to run to the bathroom. But in that moment when he was missed for 2 seconds, a car passed by him. He didn't put the wheels on. Maybe he had a fight with his wife or her husband. He was not in a good mood. Maybe he got distracted by somebody else. Epigenetic field tells us that is not the assembly line, but the influences around that is influencing the assembly line worker to make sure the car comes out perfectly. Does that make sense? That's very easy. So a lot of my patients now come up to me and says, I figured out what's wrong with my assembly line. The profiler report gives us the information of the assembly line. Now, today, the assembly line issue could be ones who had a really bad colic pain, and he just bent over just enough for the car passed by, didn't put the wheel on. Tomorrow, it may not be the same issues. Tomorrow could be he had a back pain. He said, oh, my back is hurting, I won't pick up the wheel. So therefore, when you do the profiling test, each time it may show different weaknesses. Each time it will show different factors. Our job is not trying to say to be perfectionist. You say it has to be perfect. Is to trying to make sure how can we create a factory which over the period of time it can sustain growth. I was part of a personal organizational leadership company in 2000, which they were hired by a very large petrochemical company in Perth who wanted to double the profit. The traditional doubling the profit was increase the prices, cut the staff to cut cost. And they wanted to know what else is possible. So the company who was hired to do so, they came in and did a 6-month study, and they came up and says, if you want to double, even more, increase the production, you need to increase the levels of happiness that employees feel in their marriage. Very left field. And then, second, you need to improve their health. And that very, very left field thinking. It's called system thinking that came from a Harvard management school, which pioneered Peter Senge. Anyway, so I was involved with looking after the health, and then the company ran for 3 years workshops for all the employees how to improve their marriage. And guess what happened? The share prices went up 4 times. Not only that, the productivity increased by more than 122 times. The profit went up the roof way more than expected by just looking at not the DNA sequence, looking at the epigenetic factors, which is how to improve the health and well-being of the individual's life. In that aspect was their relationships and their health. So when you're looking at the epigenetic field, you need to look at not what's happening to your body now. It's looking at the factors which is making your body to be what it is today. And most practitioners, we practice to do what we know best, and we provide nutrition, support with whatever possible. Using the profiler and the information goes beyond what we are used to, so we have to move beyond our basic paradigm. And this technology has been around, so it's not a new technology in a way. The way that Mr. Lyons and Cell Wellbeing is introducing it, how the technology and its application is new. But the idea of a bioresonance and a biofield information, you do it when you go have a CAT scan or MRI. You expose the body to a magnetic field. You line up all the electrons, all the protons actually in one direction. You send radiation through the cells, very low magnetic, and it shakes the protons. And through shaking, they release energy. And the energy picks up by the machines, the frequency that creates an image of a human body. So that technology is not foreign. It's just that it's being practiced in a different way through the medicine we know today. With ultrasound, ultrasonography, magnetic resonance, EEG, we do that with the person's thoughts. We can actually, it was just attending a brain mapping seminar, that now I utilize that technique a lot. We can actually map the brain, and we can actually, based on the waves generated in the brain, EEG, we can actually identify the personality person has. So this information is no longer foreign. It just hasn't been implemented, and not that it hasn't been available in such a beautiful way to the public as Cell Wellbeing is doing. So, I mean, as this is just an image I picked up that I show you, that when you put your hair on the plate, and there's not a light source, as I was talking to Ian, it's actually the plate itself picks up the frequency and it acts as a light source, and it resonates back against the hair and picks up the signals around the epigenetic field around the cells, and it goes into the coil, and it zips the file. You know, like sometimes when the file is too big to send through the internet, it zips it. So the profiler is actually a device that zips the information and sends it to Germany. Germany opens the zip file and reads it. So there's no static interruption. Now, the information are one of the most popular information that we know that has the greatest impact on our epigenetic field. So remember, epigenetic field, you're not dealing with the persons running in the assembly line, our DNA. We're dealing with the factors that influence the assembly lines to work efficiently in the most effective way. Now, if the assembly line is angry, the person is angry, you might end up having a car that just looks really unhappy. Or we could have someone who is so loving and passionate, and the outcome could be you sit in a car and you feel great. And you probably will go through the report yourself. I don't need to go through that. But what I want to tell you is that when you look at my experience, my 2,000 beds of experience, looking at the profiler, it gives you a lot of changes in amino acid, bacteria, viruses, mineral deficiency, antioxidants. And sometimes you sit here, and because I experimented it, I did about 100 tests. And the patient comes up, he said, but I can't find a product that has what the test tells me I need. And this is a challenge that you may face a lot. So you look at it and says, okay, what am I trying to assist my client or my friends or whatever persons or myself in relationship with the information I received, the profiler, and in relationship what I can do for the person. Primary factor, my goal is to make sure that I understand that the factor that causing a disease is the inability of that person to adapt to its environment. So how could I, based on information that I receive, how can I improve that person's ability to adapt to the stress of environment externally and internally? What could it be? And it gives you the clue. Because when we're talking about adaptation, the science of adaptation is actually called stem cell therapy. A stem cell therapy, a lot of hype people have read, they use it for anti-aging, they use it for helping with people nowadays with neurodegenerative diseases, and Bruce will talk to you later. Stem cell technology is a technology that when you look at it as a comprehensive approach, it is a science that helps us to adapt to the environment. So the most effective way to influence the epigenetic field is to look at to see what's the best way to impact body's ability to adapt to its environment. And the way to adapt to environment is to figure out how to improve stem cell production. If some of you do not know a stem cell, I'm sure Bruce will tell you, is a blank cells. The body have 220 different type of cells. The bone marrow produces blank cells, sends it to the different area of the body, and they put their own labels on them. It's a contract manufacturing factory. The body sends a report to your bone marrow. It says, I need 20 million cells for my heart. The bone marrow sends 20 million, produce 20 million stem cells, sends it to your heart. Heart says, thank you, I put my own label. So if this heart does not have enough cells to rejuvenate and regenerate itself, it cannot adapt to the demand of its environment, so it starts to fatigue. So it's an adaptive medicine. One of the most effective way to enhance the stem cell production is the number one step is to look after your gut. Because the peptides that produce the stem cells, which generates the activation of your contract manufacturing company in your body, are mostly activated at the delta sleep, at the deep level of your sleep. At the delta sleep is when your gut detoxifies. Your gut does not detoxify during the day, only does minor. But each organs in your body have a clock genes that switches on and off in a specific timing. And the stem cell genes are aligned with the clock genes regulating your gut function at a delta sleep. So you look at the profile report. It says, if I have to help that person survive the most, which aspects of it do I want to address first? Based on all my tests I've done, the first thing I do, I look at the food recommendations that they provide. So the chart on the bottom right that gives you the food sensitivity, I found to give us the most effective changes in a person's body, followed by something that you really understand what you need to approach. If you don't, you just wanted to figure out what to do. If you're in any form of a nutritional company who likes to provide nutrition, it says, what approach do I have? Which products I have which addresses the gut function the best? I'm going to start with that. And you work with that for about 90 days. And then according to the feedback I got from one of the scientists in the cell well-being, based on the research they've done, it seemed like 90 days was good. Remember, whatever caused the epigenetic factors is not the same each time. You're working with the persons to operate more efficiently. You're looking at the factors that influencing the assembly line workers. And that could be one day could have a fight with a husband or wife. The next day could have to eat the wrong food. The next day could have a problem with money. Every day is a different. And you got to deal with it as on. As a transformational coach, I coach individuals and have clients for the last 20 years. Just because you don't go to a coach, it doesn't mean it finishes after 3 or 4 workshops. You got to work with them, and you realize it's like an onion, layer after layer after layer. You unfold, the consciousness unfold. And the beauty of the profiler is not expensive. It's not like a $50,000 some of these equipments we buy. That it requires a lot of complexity to train. It's dig in with the most effective tools, and it provides us very quick information of how we could make changes to the person's health, our health, and also to be able to monitor it. on a regular basis. Now, I know that later on, a lot of my clients will always ask me, what is this, what is this, what is this? A lot of the names people misunderstand. This will later on be on the website of the profiler. Is a lot of times people don't realize that a lot of different names they use is different names for different B vitamins. Like, for example, vitamin B7 is biotin. And so therefore, it would be nice to have that information of which one of them are involved with. And I found, because I've written a textbook of sleep medicine, and 75% of biochemical processes necessary to sustain life happens when you go to sleep, not during the day. Having an understanding of how to connect the pieces is quite good. My 2,000 bet, I'm providing it to the website, and you can see that there's a certain patterns that when they show gives us a clue of what epigenetic factors we need to focus on. Is it we need to focus on detoxification, digestive system, cardiovascular? So you don't want to look at one individual thing. You want to look at the whole thing. It says, okay, that person is talking to me. Remember, the epigenetic field of that person that gives rise to the identity of that person, which is their consciousness speaking to you through the report. So don't treat it statically. Look at it as a picture. And these are all, because we do a lot of the profiling with individual biochemical profiling, these categories always shows up. And I look to see how could I identify these categories in the profilers. We employ a test called urinary organic acid with all our biochemical process. Part of this, the byproducts of every chemical reaction in the body is some levels of organic acid, which ends up in your urine. We test for them, and that tells us where the biochemistry and where the metabolism of the person is. And based on that factor that we've been using for the last 10 years, we look for certain patterns. So those patterns are no difference than when we look at the profiler. But remember, profile is giving us not just what's happening to a person right now, is what's happening to the epigenetic field that could be in majority is inherited patterns. So again, when it comes to recommendations, I recommend the dietary recommendations, whatever nutrition that you feel. The probiotic is really big. I really think everybody should start dealing with profiler primarily from the gut health first, because it is a site where signals the stem cell production. Stem cell is the #1 line for helping a body adapt to the change of environment, to either go into positive cash flow or negative cash flow and file for bankruptcy, which we call disease. If you don't have enough cells to adapt, we file for bankruptcy. Or we might, if we might go to our daddy or to someone we know, we have a cash injection. A cash injection, we call it drug, we call it stem cell therapy, we call it nutrition therapy, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, there's only so long we can rely on others to give us cash injection. We need to get our body to go from negative to positive. And the stem cell therapy, which changes the phenotype, which is what epigenetic field is all about. Now, a simple case study that I will tell you is an 8-year-old female complaining of sleep disturbances and anxiety after gastric infection, parasite, was actually diagnosed through the stool analysis. And 6 months earlier, she was treated with antibiotics and antiparasitic, and the infection was cleared out. But her sleep started to get disturbed. So she will have, in the middle of the night, she will wake up with a severe abdominal pain, occasional vomiting and diarrhea just at night. When she would get into the deep sleep, delta sleep, when the gut was ready to kick in, she would have all the reactions. So she was getting continuously treated by many different practitioners, but they're not responding. During the day, she was happy. Something happened to her that brought up her epigenetic weaknesses. Her parents may have had the issue. Whatever it was, it came up. So everything was, she was on antihistamine medication, she was on melatonin, probiotics, and everything, but was not responding. So we did a profiler test, because when she came to see me, she almost was 6 months. She was down the track to seeing every natural therapist, doctors, integrative physicians. And this was just when I was playing around with the profiler. I said, well, let's see what does universe tells us. Remember, profiler is the same as Google. When you ask for a topic, you say diarrhea, it comes up with 3.5 million search that they found. So we're tapping into the information superhighway. And the epigenetic field is no different. We're talking about billions of signals out there, and it's genius what Ian has done to be able to actually tap into that this information superhighway or epigenetic fields to be able to read and remove a lot of different advertisement that you see in your Google search, pull them out and be able to focus and give us information that can we apply every day. So what she showed was glutamine, B6, food intolerances, capsicum, cucumber, onion, tomato. Now, all of them she was already doing. The naturopath has given her all of the stuff, except the key factor, she was already off tomatoes and the cucumber. But capsicums and onion, nobody told her. But the profile, I said, well, do you know, my 2,000 bet agrees with what you've done already. But there's a 2,000 bet out of that 400 billion information that I didn't know exist. So why not be receptive to it? Go off onion. You got nothing to lose. She came back to me and said, wow, she stopped everything. I mean, I've seen that changes on a regular basis with my client. So because it's only a short 5-6 months trial basis that I've been practicing, so when I look at the report, I start with the gut first. Because it gives us, the profiler gives us information about epigenetic field, any factors that influences the factory assembly line working to operate effectively. And the best way to help them to work effectively is to enhance the body's internal cellular production and regeneration, which we call stem cell therapy, which starts in the gut. So what is the long prospect of a profiler? In 1985, I was studying in my chiropractic college in USA. I walked into the archive building, and which nobody goes there because it's an archive building. And they have a record of everything. And I saw this huge machine there, and I said, what is this? They said, we don't know. One of the old fellows donated it to the archives. And I was really fascinated with such a huge machine. We have 50 knobs on it. It's huge. And there was this lady, the next time I would go there, and I would just like to go and give my blessing to the machine because I was just drawn to it. I don't know why, what was in it first. And later on, after a couple of months that I used to go there regularly every week to see it, it's like a window shopping, hoping one day I will have it. And I saw this old woman, about 90 years old, came in and says, I was told that you've been coming regularly to look at this machine. What is your interest? I said, I do not know. He just calls on me every time I come in. And I was doing a lot of spiritual training that time. I was our college philosophy editor and for magazine, writing a lot of articles about the role of consciousness and, in that time, chiropractic. He said, oh, this is developed by Dr. Abram, physicist in 1920s, and they burn all the machines, and it's the last one that exists in the world. And he's a physicist who developed this technology that accesses the field, the biofield. And I was so fascinated when I saw the machine, and he gave me that. I said, I'd never given it to anyone. You can copy the manual. I saw the manual. I said, how could anyone in that time period have developed such a technology who can put one's blood and match the blood to the magnetic field of the earth and picked up every single disorder that exists in the one's body? And he was a physician as well. And later on, that science was destroyed, burned all the machines. Everybody practicing was put in jail for practicing medicine without license. Later on, it emerges later on as a Rife machine, bioresonance machines, the technology originally. And when I saw the technology in the profiler and what it was, and when I first went online and investigated it myself, I was very fascinated. It immediately reminded me of the machine that I saw in 1985 that I wish I could have. And I said, wow, after all these almost 30 years, the machine has been condensed into little device. I need to have it. So I called Terry and says, wow, this is fantastic. I want to have one. I planted the seed 30 years ago. Now I have it. So the field of information has been phenomenal, expanded ever since. I mean, I'm from the age of dial-up, where the computer that we used to use in my time was Fortran. You know, those, I mean, if you ever used Fortran, we used to punch cards, take it to the room which has the computer machines as big as this one, stand in a line, and gives our suitcase of cards to put there when we just write a simple program. And now the entire city is condensed into one laptop computer. So nowadays, all my patients comes to see me. I usually ask me all the symptoms. I say, since before me sharing you my opinion, you already done your research. You tell me what's wrong with you. Because everybody already gone to Google's and they've done everything. I call Google God. It has an answer for everything. It depends. It's not what you ask, it's how you ask it that gives you the answer. You notice that? I just like this. The imbalances in the biofield come from environmental factor that includes toxins, everything. So I call that all that stuff that is around us. And the cartoon that I want to show you is this individual goes up to the master and says, "Master, where is the secret to my life?" He said, "Don't tell me you climb all the way up here before trying Google." And it may be not part of your 2,000 bets yet, but I like to add a new quote to that. It says, "Don't tell me you climb all the way up here before trying the profiler." It's not the answer to the misery of mankind, but it does give us enough tools to make a dent in the universe. And I think our life is about just making the smaller dents. And just like what Terry says, that little dent we make today in our health, in our life, in our way of thinking, is a butterfly that flaps its wing, that maybe 10 years from now we are a lot healthier. Not only that, maybe our children will be a lot healthier than we are. And we've got to start somewhere. And the epigenetic field, it seems to be the right area where we could make the dent. So thank you for listening. And thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. And I'd love to hang around, but I can't. So we will hopefully see you sometime again soon.